I'm Noelle,
I'm saying hi.
and this is what we found from our BioBlitz. Mm, it'll let me. There we go.
Okay, so to start off, for our vertebrae, we chose the eastern cottontail. And first, its energy source is that it's a herbivore, which means that it eats grass and herbs and leaves, and they can also eat their own fecal to increase vitamin levels. As for its adaptation, they have a good sense of vision, smell, and hearing, which means they're good at hunting for their food, but also when they need to survive and get away from a predator. And another thing is that they can live around humans, which is good because they can get their food from farms. They benefit the environment because they create open areas by feeding on grass, which increases plant biodiversity. And they're also a food source for animals such as hawks, foxes, and coyotes, and more.
So next is the large rove beetle, which I found in my dorm room. Um, and there are actually more known species of beetle than any other insect. So there's a lot of different subtypes of this rove beetle. Some are bigger, wider, some are skinnier, and some actually can be wingless. Um, They live in a variety of moist areas, and this includes leaf litter, spaces in the bark of fallen trees, washed up plant material, underground burrows of other vertebrate animals, and they can even live in mushrooms. So their interactions with others, they have quite a few. Some have been found to pollinate flowers. They can eat fungi, but they can also be infected by some fungi. There's an ascomycota that they have been known to be infected by when they try to eat it or live in it. And then in some species, there's a commensal relationship between snails and beetles. So this means that the beetle is benefiting, but the snail is neither benefiting nor being harmed. So they'll enter the mantle cavity of the snail and then feed on the mucus or the feces of the snail. Um, in terms of like food and what they eat, some they're very versatile. Some can be scavengers and eat like dead material. Some can eat plants, and then like we talked about, they can also eat fungi. And then in terms of importance to humans, some can act as decomposers. Like I just said, they can be scavengers. So this is important in releasing the dead material, the energy in the dead material, and so that it can be recycled back into the environment. Next is the Eastern redbud, and I found this in Sunset Park, which is kind of over in like the north side of campus. So in terms of their reproduction, their sporophyte stage is dominant. This means that it's in the diploid phase for most of its life, and then it'll transition to the haploid phase or the gametophyte phase to produce spores so that they can reproduce. And their flowers are produced between March and May. And then after 2 to 3 weeks, the leaves appear and the ovaries of some of the flowers will turn into fruit. And each of these fruits will contain 4 to 10 seeds, which are released from the fruit in the fall and winter. And then the seeds will be spread, and then the hope is that the tree will take root and then sprout and turn into a whole new tree. Um, in terms of acquiring energy, they're photoautotrophs, so they photosynthesize. Um, the energy from the sun is converted into energy that they can use to synthesize carbon dioxide and water into sugars like glucose. And then importance to humans, this tree and then I think many other trees can clean out the air by absorbing pollutants. So that's beneficial to us because there's different pollutants in the air that can cause cancers and other diseases and things. All right, the eastern white pine. I also found this in Sunset Park. This is the picture of the branch, but there was a tree that was right above. So for reproduction, they're gymnosperm, and just like the redbud, the sporophyte generation is dominant. So they're in that diploid phase more frequently than they're in the haploid stage. So they begin producing cones between 5 and 10 years of age, and then the seeds can be dispersed in a variety of ways. So the wind can blow the seeds, and then hopefully they can root into the ground, or other animals can also spread them. So one example is gray squirrels in New Hampshire. They will they like to eat the seeds, and then they'll in their feces, the seeds will kind of get into the ground and germinate and then turn into a whole new tree. One thing about them is that they cannot be grown through vegetative propagation, so you can't like cut a branch off and try to grow a whole pine tree. And then survival adaptations, they're fire dependent, fast growing, and it allows them to replace other trees after a fire. So they're very hardy in wildfire situations, and they have a lateral root system, which allows for greater surface area and increased water absorption. And then their importance to the environment is that they provide food and shelter to other species in the winter. So things like squirrels and other animals will eat the needles, bark, twigs, and seeds from the pine trees throughout the winter.
For our fungus, we chose the inky cap, which I found on the way to class. It was around the creamery. It's commonly found in North America, and it can grow in different environments like lawns and meadows, but they have also been seen to grow through asphalt. For its energy source, they're saprotrophic, which means that they gain nutrients from decaying matter, and they benefit the environment because they absorb toxic metals from soil like mercury.
So
Our
our experience and it, oh, sorry,
go ahead.
you go ahead.
Our experience, we enjoyed our experience identifying organisms using the app. It was challenging to find invertebrate, especially because they were smaller than vertebrates and they would be moving around. We had challenges with finding the exact species because the app would give us like, I guess like the kingdom, but they wouldn't give us the exact species that the animals were. And it was also difficult approaching birds and insects without scaring them off and having them run off or fly away.
So yeah, that last point is some of our advice that we would approach organisms with caution, especially when trying to get a picture of them and trying to get their features so that the app can identify what the specific species is. And then I guess this also goes along with it using a good quality camera if possible, just to try to get as many details of the species as you can. Take multiple pictures, be creative in where you look. So under rocks, on trees, and like in damp areas, you'll find some interesting stuff. And then ultimately be respectful and leave everything the way you found it. So, the experiment that we chose was relating to the eastern cottontail. And there's an insecticide called fipronil that has been shown to cause seizures and other negative symptoms. So we have a null hypothesis that says the usage of a more concentrated solution of fipronil as an insecticide will not have an effect on eastern cottontail rabbits. And our alternative hypothesis is that the usage of a more concentrated solution of fipronil as an insecticide will have a negative effect on the health of eastern cottontail rabbits.
The article we chose was called Fipronil Toxicosis in Rabbits, and the results, as shown in the graph, found that 58% of rabbits experienced seizures after exposure, 57% of rabbits developed anorexia after exposure to fipronil, and 47% of rabbits experienced lethargy after exposure to fipronil.
So we propose an experiment where we are trying to discover how much fipronil can be used before it becomes toxic to the eastern cottontail. So we kind of wanted to see what would happen if we use different concentrations of fipronil. So we are using one solution that is more concentrated than another, and we're going to spray it on different patches of grass and see what happens when we expose these rabbits to the different concentrations of fipronil.
For our independent variable, we would be controlling the concentration of fipronil administered to the patches of grass, which would affect the number of rabbits that develop seizures, which is our dependent variable. For our control group is a patch of grass that's not exposed to fipronil, and for our experimental group, we'll be using a group exposed to fipronil.
And ultimately, we are just trying to figure out if rabbits, specifically the eastern cottontail, can handle fipronil in low doses, or if they really cannot be around it at all. So that's kind of the what our experiment is, the goal of our experiment is. And then here are references, and I think that's it.
Thank you. Bye.